Welcome back to Podcast of History. Last week, we spoke with John D. Rockefeller about the rise of one of the greatest fortunes in human history. Today, we step into a world of sand, silk, politics, and power. A world ruled by a queen who has fascinated the world for centuries. Please welcome Cleopatra VII of Egypt.
Thank you for inviting me. Time may bury empires, but it has never managed to silence me. Your world is strange, but I find it intriguing.
I can only imagine. Let's dive right in. You know, Cleopatra, most people immediately think of your beauty when they hear your name. But historians argue that your true power came from your intellect and political skills. I'm curious, does it frustrate you that so many remember only the surface, not the ruler behind it?
People have always simplified women, especially powerful ones. They speak of my beauty as though painted eyes could move empires. But the truth is far more complex. My strength came from language, diplomacy, philosophy, and the ability to read a room better than any general could read a battlefield. Beauty opens the door, yes, but intellect decides what happens once you step inside. If history remembers only my face, it is because they fear acknowledging my mind.
That really resonates. It's like people prefer a storybook queen rather than someone who had to make impossible choices daily. I can only imagine the pressure. And then there's Julius Caesar. Popular culture loves to tell it as a romantic story, but I suspect you saw it differently, as a political alliance, perhaps, or a mix of both. Can you share how you experienced that relationship?
Why do mortals always try to divide the two? Caesar was a tempest, brilliant, dangerous, endlessly ambitious. Being with him was like standing at the edge of a storm. You might be destroyed, or you might be reborn. Was there affection? Yes, but also respect, and the understanding that Rome was a rising sun I could not turn my back on. Our alliance stitched together two worlds, not merely two hearts.
Fascinating. So it wasn't just passion, it was diplomacy, strategy, and survival all intertwined. That really changes the story, doesn't it? I'd imagine that ruling Egypt wasn't without enormous risk. Was there a single decision that you felt was the most dangerous, or was it the burden of leadership as a whole?
To rule as myself, not as the version others wanted, a silent queen, a puppet, a decoration, but as Cleopatra. The moment I refused to bend, I declared war on every expectation placed upon me. It was not a single decision, it was every decision, every breath I took as a sovereign woman in a world terrified of such independence.
And then there's Mark Antony. People often frame your connection with him as romantic, but I sense there was much more at play. Can you explain what drew you to him beyond Caesar's shadow?
Antony was not Caesar. He was fire, not thunder. He understood my loneliness, my hunger, my desire for an Egypt that was more than Rome's glittering prize. Politically, he was a counterweight to Octavian's cold ambition. With Antony, I was not merely a queen. I was a partner in a grand, impossible dream.
It sounds like you found someone who could match your vision, not just your power. That must have been rare. People still seem to misunderstand you, often reducing you to a seductress. How do you feel about this simplification of your legacy?
They reduce me to a seductress, as if nations fall because a woman smiles. No, I was a scholar, a linguist, a strategist, a ruler who held a dying empire together with blood-stained hands. History does not misunderstand me. It fears me. So it rewrites me.
Looking back, do you regret that Egypt eventually fell under Rome's control?
Regret belongs to those who had choices. Rome was a tidal wave. I could not stop it, but I could guide its path. Egypt became a province, yes, but its spirit, its culture, its mythology, they seeped into Rome, into Europe, into the world. My homeland lives far beyond its borders. That, to me, is victory in disguise.
It's remarkable to hear you frame it as a lasting influence rather than a loss. What qualities make a leader truly great? I imagine surviving the politics of your time required more than just bravery.
Courage. Not just the courage to fight, but the courage to carry the weight of your people's fears. A leader must know when to be stone and when to be water, when to stand tall and when to bow for the sake of survival. Leadership is not a crown. It is a wound you learn to live with.
That's profound. It makes me think leadership is as much about restraint as action. Even powerful queens have quiet moments. What did a peaceful day in your life look like, away from politics and war?
I would wake to the sound of the Nile brushing against the palace walls, jasmine oil in the air, scrolls scattered across my table, diplomats waiting in the shadows. Even my quietest moments were kissed by politics. But occasionally I found solace in poetry, in music, in watching my people laugh along the riverbanks. A queen lives for her people's joy as much as for their survival.
I can almost see it. The river, the laughter, the scrolls. It's intimate and humanizing. If you were alive today, how would you approach ruling or influencing the world? Surely it's very different from your era.
Today, I would rule hearts before I ruled borders. Your age is not governed by swords, but by stories and screens. I would wield influence the way Caesar wielded legions, with precision, charm, and undeniable presence. The throne has changed, power has not.
It's incredible to imagine a Cleopatra navigating social media and diplomacy simultaneously. And what about the true cost of power? People see glory, but I suspect it comes with a hidden price.
Loneliness of a kind that hollowed even the strongest marble. Imagine a room full of people, all kneeling, all praising you, yet none truly knowing you. That is the burden of the crown. I accepted it willingly, but make no mistake, it consumed more than it gave.
That image is haunting and very human. Now, let's move into our signature segment, What If? If you could change a single moment in history, what would you alter?
I would alter the balance between Rome's factions earlier. I underestimated how deeply ambition could rot a republic. Had alliances shifted sooner, perhaps Egypt and Rome could have risen together, not as conqueror and conquered, but as equals. But destiny is a stubborn storyteller.
What if Caesar had lived longer? How would that have changed your life and the world?
Then the world would be carved differently. Rome would have transitioned into empire sooner under his iron hand, and I would have stood beside him as more than a queen, as a partner shaping the world's future. Our children might have bridged two civilizations, but history chose another path.
The weight of destiny and human ambition. It's almost tragic. And Antony, if he had survived the battle against Octavian.
Rome would tremble. Octavian's cold reign might never have risen. Egypt and Rome might have birthed a new age. Antony was flawed, but courageous. Together, we were dangerous. Perhaps too dangerous for history to allow.
It really underscores how fragile and decisive history can be, doesn't it? People are still captivated by you. Why do you think that is?
Because they cannot decide who I truly was. A lover, a warrior, a scholar, a villain, a victim. Every generation paints me differently. And perhaps that is my greatest power. I live in the imagination as much as in history.
And that's why we're still talking about you thousands of years later. If you could give a single piece of advice to today's leaders.
Listen more than you speak. Observe more than you act. And never forget that the smallest gesture can carry the weight of a nation.
What lesson did Rome teach you that still resonates today?
That ambition without vision is destructive. That even the mightiest empire is fragile when it forgets its people. And that history favors those who adapt, not those who cling.
Looking back, Cleopatra, what moment in your life made you feel most alive?
Standing on the deck of my royal barge, watching the Nile flow endlessly, knowing that my people's lives intertwined with mine, that every decision mattered, yet I was free to imagine what Egypt could become. That was life in its purest form.
It's poetic, almost cinematic. Do you think vulnerability was ever a strength for you?
Absolutely. To show doubt, to admit fear, to embrace human emotion, these open doors that brute force never could. True power comes from balance, not rigidity.
A lesson many modern leaders could learn. When you think of your legacy, what do you hope people truly remember?
Not just my battles or alliances, but the vision, the intellect, and the courage to live authentically, unapologetically, as myself.
Powerful. That will inspire generations. Finally, Cleopatra, any last message to those listening today?
Kings rule through fear, but queens rule through stories. And mine is far from over.
And to our listeners, who should we bring on the next episode? Leave your suggestions in the comments and tell us what you'd like to learn next.